Warm good morning to all of you and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to today's The Hindu newspaper analysis, where we take a look at the international edition of today's newspaper, understand the important articles which are there for the examination, be it for the prelims or be it for the mains exam, understand the nuances involved, and also take a look at the sample questions which can be framed from the topic and understand how to create answer writing along the way. Now today we are going to have a discussion of around 8 to 9 various different topics relevant for the prelims as well as the mains examination. Now if you are interested in downloading the PDF, you can download it from the channel link itself provided in the description, or you can get it from the Telegram channel listed here, and there you will get the downloaded PDF as well. Now, having said that, the topics that we are going to discuss today. So today in total, we are going to have a discussion of around 9 different topics. Now, out of them, 5 are going to be important for your mains perspective, even though this particular topic about Syria slightly also important for your prelims. So first of all, air pollution will lower India's solar generation capacity. This talks about the role of air pollution and climate change in terms of how much amount of solar energy we are able to generate. This is going to be relevant for your GS paper 3. Then we have a host of articles in the editorial section and in the op-ed page also dealing with health and governance. So all these three, they talk about the issues in healthcare sector from one perspective to another, be it in terms of the rise in out-of-pocket expenditure, the issue of public health education in India, and also the issue of nutrition, how we are lopsided when we view the aspect of nutrition. So all these are also going to be relevant for your GS paper 3. Then after that, is Syria heading towards peace or more chaos? This article basically analyzes the important pivot point at which Syria stands out of today. So here we will be discussing the timeline in terms of the recent past, what Syria has been experiencing, and how is it that the next few days can end up determining whether that region will be that of a peace or more disturbance, right? So this becomes relevant for your GS2. Now, some of the articles and images which we will use to understand the aspects associated with prelims. So here, vulture conservation, mangrove population has shown an increase in the region of Tamil Nadu. Then India, New Zealand resume the trade deal talks. Now here we shall be talking about which are the important items in terms of the trade parameters between India and New Zealand, and what is Starlink by Elon Musk. So that is what we are going to have a discussion for today. Now starting with the first topic of the day. So when we talk about the first topic, so it is about air pollution and how it will end up lowering the solar generation capacity. Now, solar power. Solar power is referred to as an energy of the future, particularly when we talk about a country like India. Now, India has got a lot at stake when it comes to solar energy. Why? India is a tropical country. That means it lies in between the tropical regions, right? Tropic of Cancer passes through the central part of the country. So the amount of solar energy which is received per square meter per hour in India, what we measure in the form of solar insolation. So the amount of solar insolation received in India is high on an average throughout the year. On an average, we get almost 300 days of bright sunshine in our country, right, throughout the year on an average. So that is basically having a huge upside potential for solar power generation. And that is something where India has started taking the lead in the global race, where we have started making and setting up large mega solar power plants. But this also, the importance of solar energy is much more there for India, because India suffers from the worst of climate change, be it cloudburst, be it floods, be it droughts, be it heat waves. We are suffering the brunt of climate change almost in an unparalleled manner. Every year, tens of thousands of crores of property, lives, everything are lost due to the issues of climate change. Now, when we are facing that issue and the brunt of climate change, Why is climate change happening? Global warming, rise in temperature due to increased amount of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur, nitrous oxides, they are being released into the atmosphere, which is leading to increased amount of warming, and that increased amount of warming is causing these issues. That is why on various different global platforms, India has basically talked about its commitment to switch over to renewable, and in renewable, 1/5 of the concentration of renewable is going to be in the portion of solar energy. So when we talk about, let's suppose, India's own goals and ambitions, now in 2021, at the global platform of the Conference of Parties to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, India had declared its Panchamrit goals. Amongst those Panchamrit goals, a substantial amount of impact was given and attention was given to solar power. So presently, India is the 5th largest solar power producer across the world, right? It has ambitious renewable energy targets, aiming to generate 50% of the electricity from renewables by the year 2030. And in that renewable, you will have 1/5 or 20% at least by solar. Okay. Now plans are there to install 500 gigawatt of renewable solar energy. Here also, or renewable energy overall, here also solar energy will occupy a greater chunk of the share. Now we have also gone for a kind of a decentralized model of solar energy, and that is what the government is endeavoring to do, that rather than having these large solar power plants and these large solar parks, why don't we go for rooftop solar, right? A small decentralized solar power production, be it in the rural areas, be it in the hilly regions. Now that can provide the energy security, but at the same time, it can be cost effective. So that is the current status that we are living in. But then, when we talk about the requirement of a greater amount of solar energy utilization, so understand this for 2 minutes, pay attention. You see, when we talk about solar energy, we generally think about the solar panel, isn't it? Solar panel has got the various photovoltaic cells. Now, those photovoltaic cells are very important for the production of or conversion of solar energy into electricity. Higher the efficiency of the photovoltaic cell, greater is the amount of electricity that you will get out of the solar energy, right? So let's suppose you consider any kind of solar panel. Now this solar panel will have solar rays which fall upon it. Now this solar energy which is received, that is getting converted into electrical energy, isn't it? But then the efficiency of energy conversion is also dependent on many other factors. Which are the factors? So some of them are very logical. Greater the amount of solar energy, greater will be the amount of electricity generated. So that means for a higher production of solar energy, you need higher solar insolation, isn't it? Bright sunshine, cloudless sky, clear sky, that is required for greater energy conservation or greater energy conversion rather. Now that is something that tropical countries have. It is on the attribute of being situated in the tropical region that we have, in a way, started the co-chair of the International Solar Alliance. India has been one of the partnering countries in establishing the International Solar Alliance, right? And that is where we have a large potential. But here, what is also important for better efficiency and better energy conversion is a slightly low ambient temperature. If the temperature, let's suppose, temperature in the surrounding area increases by more than 2 degrees Celsius as compared to normal, whatever the current situation is, if it increases by more than 2 degrees Celsius, efficiency starts dropping. So that is where you have to limit the amount of ambient temperature. How do you do that? If you have some breeze, some amount of winds blowing about, that brings about a cooling factor. So, what is required for better energy conversion in the case of solar cell? A brief summarization. High solar insolation, right? So, bright sunshine, clear sky, cloudless sky. Secondly, slightly lower ambient temperature. And thirdly, slight breeze and airflow around the solar panel to reduce the temperature. So, this is the requirement overall. But then, what is the impact that we are facing in India as of now? In India, we have a large amount, or the problem of pollution is persistent, isn't it? You would have heard about the fact that when we talk about air quality index, be it particulate matter, be it the various different other pollutants like carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, etc., our cities are largely one of the most polluted regions across the world. So that means there is an impact on pollution. Now, how is it that the pollution impacts solar energy production? Very simple. So here, let's suppose you consider the solar panels. Now, the solar energy which is coming, now this solar energy falls on certain small aerosols, dust particles, particulate matter. What are aerosols, by the way? Aerosols are microscopic particles suspended in the atmosphere to the size of few microns or micrometers. They can be liquid, they can be solid as well. For example, sulfur-based aerosols, they are liquid in nature. For example, when we talk about black carbon or soot, something that you get as a result of burning of any carbon-based fuel, right, from your exhaust pipes to your kerosene lamps, everywhere you get that black carbon. That is your solid aerosol. So these aerosols, what they do? They will in a way refract and scatter the solar rays. Now, as the solar rays are refracted and scattered, you can always imagine that the amount of solar insolation reaching the solar panel, that will be less, isn't it? So that means what? Due to aerosols, lesser insolation, and lesser insolation means less energy. And this is what is also referred to as a phenomena of global dimming. You see, you would have heard about the term dimming. You dim the lights, you brighten the lights anywhere. Now, due to large amount of pollution in the atmosphere above the regions like India and China, these pollutants, dust particles, etc., they reduce the amount of solar energy which anyways reaches the ground surface. That is a phenomena which is known as global dimming, where the amount of light is dimmed out. So that also means, naturally, solar rays reaching the panel will be lesser energy production. So here, this is causing also causes global dimming. Okay. Now, by the way, these pollutants, they will trap more amount of heat being radiated outwards from the Earth's surface. So they will lead to warming, global warming, due to the greenhouse effect that we have. And as soon as the temperature increases, that is aided by the climate change, that increase in temperature will again reduce the efficiency. Reduces efficiency. So it is a kind of a vicious cycle, isn't it? So you have greater pollution will lead to greater warming will reduce the emission, pollution also will reduce the efficiency. So overall, both of them are reducing the efficiency of solar power which is generated in our country. So this is a study which has been carried out by certain researchers in India, and that has been published. Now that basically rings the warning bells for us, and that tells us that there are certain regional imbalances also along the way. For example, the study has predicted that going ahead into the future, the regions like Kerala, Arunachal Pradesh, they are going to experience more amount of sunny days, which is a bit out of ordinary. Because if you take a look at the present day situation, Kerala is one of the first receivers of monsoonal rain, very dense clouds. Arunachal Pradesh, one of the larger receivers of rainfall in India. Now, both these areas projected to have more sunshine days means there is going to be a drying of the climate. And that does not bode well for the temperature rise across the country. The heat waves will become more common. So what do we need to do going ahead? We need to ensure there is a greater and better research which is carried out, isn't it? So that we are able to understand how we can increase the efficiency of production of energy despite the hindrances and the obstacles that we have, right? So here we need research, investment in clean energy infrastructure, reduction of pollution by setting very strict emission norms in terms of vehicles. Older vehicles should not be allowed. Clean energy should be used. When I say clean energy, we basically mean hydrogen energy, we basically mean electrical energy. So they should be promoted much more. Implement better urban planning strategies and large-scale adoption of solar power, right, with improved research and development. So very briefly in 1 minute, what is it that we have discussed till now in this article? The role of solar energy in meeting India's ambitious climatic goals, right? Then when we talk about this solar energy, what is it dependent upon? Its efficiency is dependent upon what? So its efficiency is dependent upon greater solar sunshine. Then the lower ambient temperature. Ambient temperature means surrounding temperature. Surrounding temperature should not be very high, because if that is high, the solar panel heats up. And then a cool breeze or an airflow around the solar panel to lower the temperature. So under these conditions, the efficiency is higher. But in India, the problem that we have, greater pollutants in the air reduce the amount of energy received on the surface, reduces the solar energy produced. And secondly, there is warming due to which the temperature is increasing. It has increased beyond 2 degrees Celsius, and hence that is where the efficiency has further gone down. We have also seen the regional variation predicted in the near-term future, and also what is the way forward, what can be the solution provided. Now you can have a kind of a question frame from this in the mains examination. Success of renewables in India is going to be driven by our approach to tackle pollution, right? Elaborate with the case of solar energy in India, 15 marks. Success of renewables in India, right? So that is one key phrase that you have to address. Driven by our approach to tackle pollution. So you have to address both these phases. And how do you address that? So in the intro, there are a couple of ways in which you can start the intro. One of the ways is directly talking about that pollution in India is very high. India is facing the brunt of climate change. But that will be a kind of a disorganized introduction. So in an organized introduction, how should you begin your answer? You talk about the fact that India is one of those countries which faces the maximum brunt of climate change, be it cloudburst. You have to list it out. Cloudburst, heat waves, floods, cyclones, drought cycles, etc. We have it all, right? So that is the first sentence where you have indicated about the problem that is being faced. Then after that, you talk about that India is leading or India is basically showing the world or leading by example by its climate commitments, whereby talk about the climate commitments that India has, adding 500 gigawatt of renewables with a greater proportion to solar energy, then having a kind of renewable energy to be around 50% of the total energy generated. All that you talk about here. After that, then talk about the issue faced by solar energy, because then when you come into the body portion, you have to highlight the solar energy issue. So there you talk about the issues faced by the solar energy sector. And there you can talk about the reduction in efficiency. You give certain data also that it is projected by the study that if that reduction in efficiency continues, we are staring at a loss of thousands of gigawatt hour of energy every year. So that much amount of energy can be lost. So the need of the hour, so provide the solution also. Okay. However, if let's suppose this was not talking about only solar energy, it was only, let's suppose the statement was framed like this and elaborate with the situation in India, then you had to talk about the impact of climate change on wind energy also, impact on climate change in the case of small, micro and the case of mini hydropower plants also, the impact of climate change, because in wind energy, climate change basically brings about more storms. During storms, wind energy is not generated. The power plants are shut down. Then in the case of the dams, you talk about the case where due to variability in rainfall, the production of hydroelectricity becomes unreliable because of less water storage. So all the various sectors in that case you could highlight, but here it is only about solar energy, a direct answer about what we have discussed. Okay. Now, then before moving into the next article, so we are conducting UCSC Unacademy Civil Services Championship Test. All those of you who are appearing for the examination, this year or next year, do take a look at this particular test. It is a representative test in terms of the type of questions that you face. So this will be held on 23rd of March, 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. Do take a look at the questions, try to get as many marks as possible, and lucrative prizes await you. Now, having said that, we move into the second article. The second article deals with the challenges of public health education in India. Public health education. What do we mean by the term public health? One is health education, that is easily understandable. But what is this concept of public health? So very briefly, it is a science of protecting and improving the health of people and their communities. Right? A kind of, think about it, diagnostic, caregiving and wellness institutes or wellness factors that can improve the standard of life of people in general. That is public health. Right? So when we talk about it, it is achieved by promoting healthy lifestyles, researching diseases, right? Injury prevention, detecting, preventing and responding to infectious diseases. When you improve the lifestyle, then non-communicable diseases and lifestyle diseases like diabetes, these basically hypertension, etc., they can be controlled. So that is where the public health overall improves. Now, when we talk about public health in India, it has largely been an ignored sector for a long period of time. So, prior to independence, pre-independence, you had some work which went into the public health. You had establishment of institute in Kolkata in the 1920s, but at the same time, that is where it was restricted to. Now, many of the individuals who were interested in public health research, public health education, they basically had to move to foreign countries in order to gain better idea about what this public health education is. Now, presently, that public health education is in a kind of a doldrum. Why? Because over a period of time, large number of such institutes, large number of courses dealing with public health have mushroomed all across the country. But they don't have any proper regulation which is followed. So think about it. A simple case. Large number of institutes teaching something with no proper regulatory oversight. So obviously the standard of what is being imparted in the form of education, that standard becomes questionable. Not everybody will be basically providing the same standard and the same crucible of study material, or be it the practical case studies. As a consequence, the people who come out of these institutes mostly find themselves unemployable. At the same time, you also have the case where due to a lack of practical job experience like training programs, internships, etc. That is where their entire knowledge is largely theoretical and they are unable to serve the practicality that the society faces. So that is where the public health education in our country is. So let us analyze those in different aspects in greater detail. Now, relevance of public health in India. Now you see, public health is also our constitutional obligation. As per the directive principle of state policy, it is something which is mentioned in Article 47, where the state has to endeavor to improve the public health across the country. Now, through nutrition, etc. So, it is a constitutional obligation of the state. So, that is where it has to be improved. But then, ensuring national well-being and efficient healthcare delivery, that has been the endeavor of all the successive governments who have been in power. The COVID pandemic indicated to us the importance of having these public healthcare professionals, because that was the time when people would be running from pillar to post and there were not enough trained individuals who could lend help. So that is something which we should not face again. That crisis should be kept in the past. So when we analyze that public health, what are the issues affecting the public health education? First of all, lack of standardized training and practical learning, something that we talked about. There is no such regulatory oversight. So there is no such standard curriculum which is to be followed. Imagine that you are, let's suppose, carrying out your graduation, engineering. Every engineering college is teaching something random. Now, will every person who comes out of the engineering college, will they have the equal amount of knowledge? No. Somebody will have more, but more dangerously, somebody will have very less. In the case of healthcare, that is something you should not risk. So here, curriculum lacks uniformity, right? So quality of education is impacted, insufficient faculty and practical training gaps, job experience, training programs, institutions offering various public health courses are unevenly distributed with many areas. They don't even have one such single institute which offers such courses. So as a consequence, certain geographical areas, they are bereft or they are denied of any such healthcare individuals which can provide successful intervention. Then limited job opportunities for graduates. Very few opportunities open up in the research sector. Very few, right? And many people apply there. So when you don't have enough job opportunities, you have spent some amount of money in training for that, then the next generation won't take up that discipline anymore, that you are not able to find job there, so let me do something else in life. So that will deteriorate our overall health infrastructure in the country, right? So graduates often work in very short-term programs. Research and teaching opportunities are limited. Job security also is a major ask. It is not given for that matter. And regulatory oversight is something we have talked about. It is not there at all. So what is the way forward if we have to improve the public health education in India to overall augment the public healthcare sector? So basically, government and the private sectors, after all, many of the private colleges also provide education in the public healthcare. So they need to come together, devise a modern day implementable and practical curriculum involving on-the-job training, involving greater deputation and deployment in the rural areas as well. So that will serve multiple purposes. At the same time, addressing curriculum and training issues, standard curriculum and certification, maybe an oversight by a central body or a central authority like that. Then practical training, faculty, as well as state and national health systems should be augmented thereby, so that our overall healthcare network becomes much stronger and is able to handle much greater variations. Okay, there has to be an increase in public health awareness programs also, so that people are also aware about the role of that public health. Unless and until that awareness comes, most of the people, you ask them what is public health, they won't be even aware about it. In general, again, in case you are still confused, it is the health interventions such as diagnostics, wellness, right, lifestyle facilities, or not facilities, but lifestyle changes and choices, dealing with infectious diseases, non-communicable diseases for the larger public. General diagnostics that you can think about. Okay. Now, after that, we move on to the other article dealing with, again, health and governance. This talks about from insurance-driven private healthcare to equity. Now, before we go to the point-by-point analysis of this entire article, let me give you and set for you a brief context, what this article is about, so that you have some clue approaching into the point. First of all, when we talk about improving healthcare facilities, there are various different government programs to improve the healthcare facilities in our country. Now, you all also must be aware, you would be aware about the fact that a common normal Indian spends a large amount of money out of the pocket in order to avail healthcare, medicines, etc. That is what is referred to as out-of-pocket expenditure. Out-of-pocket expenditure. Right? Now, WHO some time back had carried out a detailed study where they talked about the fact that for a person or an individual in rural household, 70% of out-of-pocket expenditure is on healthcare. Why is that worrisome? So, think about it. I am a daily wage earner, right? So, going to the job, working as maybe a manual labor, skilled, unskilled labor, anything, that will give me 100 rupees or 300 rupees on a daily basis. Now, if I fall ill, I will have to spend that money on healthcare. At the same time, I am basically losing out on my earning days as long as I am sick. So, not only are you spending more, so when you spend more, that means what? Your family doesn't have enough money to feed themselves, maybe send the children to the better schools, right? So, in general, the conditions, the socio-economic situation of the family and the society keeps on reducing if your expenditure on healthcare is extraordinarily high, right? So, in order to improve the situation, what is a solution that you will provide? The government should help those in need. The government should help the poorer population reduce their out-of-pocket expenditure, isn't it? Now, the government has basically brought in certain programs such as the Poshan for nutrition, programs when we talk about, let's suppose, immunization, programs such as the Anganwadi workers being deployed for healthcare interventions. But more importantly, in recent times, the government has come up with the Ayushman Bharat Jan Arogya Yojana, whereby as an individual, if let's suppose you are hospitalized, your hospitalization cost will be covered by the government. If let's suppose you have to get certain surgery, the surgery cost to some extent will be covered by the government. So, government from its end is trying to lower the burden on the common population. But then this article argues that the problem is somewhere else. We are addressing something else. So let us understand what the problem is. Think about it. A person in rural India, we talk about rural India time and time again because even today 65% of our population is based in the rural countryside, right? So problems of rural India represent the problems of the overall country. So a person in rural India, when they start feeling sick, is it immediately that they will get hospitalized? No. They will go to the nearest primary healthcare centers. Now, those nearest primary healthcare centers in the talukas, in the villages, they are of very poor quality. The infrastructure is abysmal, right? The trained individuals are not there. Now, only if the disease starts to get more prominent, they get more sick, that is when they will go to a secondary care center, maybe a tertiary care or a super specialty hospital, that is when the Ayushman Bharat Yojana will kick in. But when it comes to seeking intervention at the primary healthcare center, that is where the remuneration provided by Ayushman Bharat is not there. Right? So there, what do the people do? They spend out of the pocket to buy medicines, etc. So the out-of-pocket expenditure increases. That lowers the amount of disposable income that they have, and the vicious cycle of poverty continues. Right? So the article basically argues that this is an insurance-based scheme, that I go to the hospitals to get myself checked up, to get myself, or maybe when I get hospitalized, to seek intervention. So I will have an insurance company which will pay that money. I will be reimbursed later, or the insurance company will be reimbursed later. Right? So rather than spending the government funds on that, the article argues the government should spend more amount of money in boosting and improving the condition of the primary healthcare centers. That's it. Okay, so let us analyze this article, break this in point by point manner so that it is easier to digest now. So starting first of all, what is the present day reality? Now, India has committed itself, being a welfare state. We are a welfare state, right? So we have committed ourselves for health for all under the WHO's Universal Health Coverage Framework. Now, universal health coverage, that is health coverage for all. Now, under this universal health coverage, the aim is to reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure, because that has got a direct impact on the livelihood of the individuals, right? So that is the present day context. Now, what is the issue with the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana that is being implemented, where the amount of money allocation, budgetary allocation is also on the uptick? So what is the issue with that? So first of all, that provides financial protection against hospitalization costs, surgery, etc. But that is not the first medical intervention that you will need. You will be required to get treated maybe at a very preliminary stage of the disease. You will never require to be hospitalized later on if the disease is treated initially itself. So that is something which this Yojana doesn't cover. Then this model prioritizes hospital-based tertiary care over primary preventive care. Public healthcare systems, as a consequence, they get weakened. Why? So think about it. I have a public hospital, I have a private hospital. Public. Right? Now, under the Ayushman card that you have, now you will be insured under this, isn't it? There will be a kind of an insurance. So after that, mostly many of the private hospitals will be covered. You go to the private hospital, the insurance company will get paid out from the back end, right? You won't have to incur any cost. So in this case, who is receiving the money? The private companies, the private sector, the private insurance. But the public healthcare sector overall is getting impacted. Its status, it is not getting the funds. Its status is not going to improve. So public healthcare system is being weakened, whereas the private healthcare system, which works on insurance penetration mostly, even today, take it on your own practical experience. If you fall ill today, if you go to any of the private hospitals, the bills will be almost to the ballooning level, something which is intolerable, isn't it? Now, if you go to the government hospital, the prices are lower. Maybe the services provided are not to that good extent. So what is required? You improve the funding of these public hospitals so that better services are provided. But in these private hospitals, who are the individuals who frequent these private hospitals? Those who have insurance coverage, health insurance. Then everything is taken care of. So in a way, if the private hospitals work under the umbrella of insurance companies only, that I have the health insurance, I don't have to pay any money in the hospital. I don't even care what is the hospitalization charge. slowly and steadily, they will keep on raising the charges in the hospital. Medicine charges, hospitalization charges, everything will keep on increasing slowly. After all, that is covered by insurance. Today, what required 5 lakh rupees, tomorrow to get the same thing done, you will have to shell out 15 lakh rupees, but you won't even come to know because the insurance was covering it yesterday also. Insurance is covering it today also. This continues till a situation will come where going to private hospital without insurance is impossible. That is also the reality in countries like US, where under the healthcare program you had Obamacare, etc. The insurance companies are so well empowered. If you have a health insurance, fair enough, the system will take care of you. But if you don't have health insurance, in that case, you can run from pillar to post, but then the health cost is something you won't be able to bear. So, this article argues that Ayushman Bharat Yojana is also in a way directing the private healthcare in that manner or in that direction. At the same time, the public healthcare system without getting adequate funds is getting stymied, is suffering on a day-to-day basis, right? So, neglect of primary healthcare sector and the primary healthcare centers, that is happening. Now, when you neglect the primary healthcare centers, this is where the diseases can be cured initially itself. If you invest more in infrastructure of primary healthcare centers, more trained staff, that is where the state government obviously has to play a larger role, and that comes under the aegis of many of the state powers as well. So that is where it will reduce the burden on the common man. It will reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure of the common man. And attention to secondary and tertiary care, if that is dominant, then obviously there will be an inequality and imbalance in the society. Not everybody requires tertiary care, right? Over a long run, also think about it logically. What is judicious for the government? The government spending 5 rupees in taking care that your flu symptoms get removed there itself, or spending 5 lakh rupees because your flu symptoms have escalated to such an extent that there needs to be the sinus operation which needs to be carried out. Obviously, if the flu symptoms are treated at the basic level, the government will incur only around 5 rupees, right? Rather than letting it escalate to 5 lakh. So that is where escalation of government cost in the long run is also happening because of ignorance of primary healthcare centers. So primary healthcare centers should be paid attention to rather than the insurance driven secondary and tertiary care centers, right? Now, when we talk about insurance based model, so insurance schemes favor private hospitals. That shifts the capital away from the public hospitals. Other than that, increase in FDI in insurance has been carried out, isn't it? Because in our country, there is a lack of financial penetration in the larger population. So earlier, the FDI in insurance sector was increased to 50%, then 50 to 74%, and in certain cases now 100%. So more private insurance firms are coming into the market. So that is when this will be available only to certain people. Not all the insurance products will be available to everyone. So that is when the private party nexus can be detrimental to the poor population. Informal sector workers, they won't have that insurance coverage. So as a consequence, that is the labor force, skilled and unskilled labor. So health literacy gaps, they come into existence. Complicated claim processes are there, so many people don't even indulge themselves in this entire bureaucratic mechanism. Financial constraints are also prevalent. So this in a way creates inequality, health inequality, and worst of all, leading to a deficiency in human capital in certain areas, right? Now, what are the lessons that can be learned from the global models? So you have two prevalent global models. One which is followed by country like the US. Another one followed by countries like Thailand, Costa Rica, etc. Now in US, you have the insurance-based model. Insurance-based. where if you get the insurance or if you have got the government insurance, government or private insurance, your healthcare needs are taken care of. So as a consequence, what has happened there, that the cost of hospitalization or cost of healthcare has really ballooned up. Healthcare has ballooned up. Now that is out of bounds for anyone who doesn't have insurance. So in a way, now you are in the clutches of the insurance mafia. You have the healthcare mafia, you have the insurance mafia. Where do you escape? So this is something which is not suited for a developing region or a developing country like India, where the proportion of poorer population is very high. Then we have the Thailand and the Costa Rica model. In the region of Thailand, government funds or basically the taxpayer funds are utilized in order to ensure the provision of better primary health care, improvement of those centers, health and wellness centers establishment, and so on. So that has improved the various different parameters of health across the country of Thailand. Even Turkey has indicated an improvement on the same model, and so is the case with Costa Rica. So this is where it is the primary healthcare center model, PHC model. Okay, that needs to be promoted overall. Now, after this, if we take a look at what is the way forward, so basically increased investment in primary healthcare, ensuring universal access to preventive healthcare, something which doesn't lead you to illness at all. Prevention is better than cure. Policy addressing the health needs of the informal, vulnerable, right, old age population, then the women, children, everyone, the unemployed, everyone. That kind of universal health policy is required. Safeguards to prevent private insurance dominance, right? Comprehensive public health care including cost control mechanism, public health packages, and strong regulatory oversight, so that the price escalation in an unjustifiable manner is not witnessed. Okay, so that is about establishing equity rather than insurance driven healthcare in the country. Now, after this, coming on to basically the practice question which can be framed onto it, critically examine the role of Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana in reducing the out-of-pocket expenditure. The question is critically examined. So you have to talk about both sides of the argument. You see, Pradhan Mantri, the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, while on one hand it has reduced the hospitalization cost, it has ensured that certain diseases which were earlier out of bound for the common population, they can be dealt with. Out-of-pocket expenditure in those cases have reduced. However, this has also exposed a policy weakness where more attention now is being paid in, let's suppose, the insurance-based treatment rather than the wellness and preventive intervention which can be done at the level of primary health care. Now, what it leads to, the overall impact, increase in out-of-pocket expenditure, increase in the government expenditure, weakening of the public health finances, strengthening of the private sector, ballooning of the healthcare cost. With the example of US, you talk about it. Then you talk about what is the way forward. Okay, so that will finish the entire answer. Do try to write this answer. Let's see where you are lacking. Improve your answer writing skills from today itself. Very important for the examination. Now, then the last article dealing with healthcare, and that is the tackling the problem of nutrition. Now, this article talks about the fact that, look, when we talk about nutrition, mostly when we say that there is a nutritional gap in India, after all, hunger index, etc., they keep on indicating that the problem of nourishment in India is a major issue, isn't it? Now, thereby, the article argues that when we think about nutrition, our viewpoint is very narrow. We are only able to think about malnutrition, lack of nutrition, lack of food. But that is only one type of malnutrition. There is the case where people, due to lack of enough or the perfect dietary balance, they suffer from lifestyle diseases like diabetes, anemia, right? And that is where even obesity for that matter. So many people suffer from these kind of diseases. So that also should be tackled, right? That is what the entire article is framed about. So presently, if you take a look at the status of nutritional health in India, as per the National Family Health Survey 5, it doesn't paint a very rosy picture. 36% of children under 5, they are stunted. Stunted means the height is not as per what the average age requires or is expected. 16% of infants receive adequate diet. That means a whopping 84%, they have some amount of issue with the diet that they have. 60% of the women, almost 60% of the women, they are anemic. So think about it, if the women are anemic, that will lead to greater issues of maternal mortality. That will also lead to greater issues of child health and infant mortality, right? Then 24% of women, 24% of men, 23% of women, they are overweight or obese. Now that in itself causes issues like hypertension, right? Creates issues like diabetes. That is where we as a country are suffering. Then 14% of Indians take medicines for diabetes. So the condition of nutrition in India is not up to the mark, right? That would be a kind of an understatement. So what are the issues that we face? So first of all, here, when we talk about nutritional issues, it is not only about the availability of food anymore. There is a prevalent nutritional issue in terms of the dietary habits that people have, right? Many of them are cultural, traditional, etc., regional, where in certain regions you will find that there are lack of plant-based nutrients. In certain regions you will find a overt reliance on rice and wheat. So as a consequence, lack of vegetables doesn't provide you with the vitamins and the nutrients which are required, right? So there are various different cultural regional issues which impact the amount of nutrition that we take in. Women outside the reproductive age, right? Men and the elderly, they do not figure out in the national nutritional policies. Any nutritional policies from portion to so on that you think about, you will basically think about or come across the class-based or the economy-based classification. But when we talk about the urban poor, when we talk about the old age in the urban areas, they don't have enough amount of policy designed or driven through them. Think about it. Anganwadi workers, who are an important cog in the wheel for the entire healthcare system, these Anganwadi workers, they are overtly dominant where? In the rural India. But is all the problem of healthcare associated with rural India? No. You have issues dealing with nutritional aspect which is to be present even in urban area, urban poor. They also suffer. So they need to be taken care of as well, isn't it? So lifestyle induced diseases such as diabetes, hypertension and other non-communicable diseases are ignored in the nutritional process, right? Now, what are the policy flaws? One of them we have talked about, the ignorance of primary healthcare centers. Programs are not holistic. When we talk about the nutritional programs, mostly they address or cater to certain geographies, right? For example, northeast, eastern part of India, etc. They should be uniformly spread over. Then nutritional advice to pregnant and lactating women, that should be provided in a greater amount by the Anganwadi workers. For that, you need greater number of empaneled Anganwadi workers as well. Their number needs to increase. Support adolescents, children and adult as well, recovering from diseases and trauma. So that is where the healthcare professionals need to increase. Interventions, lifestyle practices, that needs to come into place, right? Now here, when we talk about what should we do going ahead, moving forward, expanding nutritional services to all segments, food system should emphasize basically what is locally available. Millets, for example, local vegetables, for example, pulses, they should be made a part of the diet. low cost and nutrient dense produce, middle class nutrition, basically avoiding processed sugar laden food. Then linking nutrition with local food traditions. Only then it will be long lasting. You cannot provide dietary customized inputs, something which is not implementable by the common masses. Engaging local communities, because the researchers have indicated, even in the case of vaccination programs like smallpox, etc., all of them became successful only when driven by the local community and the local elites. Once they accept a certain way of life, they accept a certain health reality, it becomes much more implementable. Okay? Now, after that, talking about Syria. Now, Syria has been in news for the past couple of years now. But then, over the past few months, in the region of Syria, there have been multiple different turmoil and changes which have been experienced. So, before moving ahead, talking about the timeline of what is happening in Syria, for those of us who are not aware about the recent developments. So, in December, the long-ruling Bashar al-Assad regime, that was overthrown, right? There was a rebellion and it was overthrown. But even though Bashar al-Assad and the elite, they escaped, but not his loyalists. Those loyalists had been in power for a very long period of time. So they still managed to wield control over the coastal area of western Syria. At the same time, you have the region of Syria is bounded by various countries, such as when you have Israel on one side, Turkey on other side. So that poses additional problems. Now, the new interim government which is there, that interim government has tried to broker peace with the Kurds. And that is where the northeastern region is experiencing some peace, but then the Turkish-based and the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army is creating problems in northeastern part of Syria. We'll take a look at the map of Syria also to understand this better. So, the next few days are crucial in drafting of a constitution, in the stability of the government. They are crucial in determining whether Syria in the near time future will be driven by peace or will again be bordered by conflicts. So when we talk about the region of Syria, this is the brief timeline for all of you. So here, Bashar al-Assad's regime collapsed in December. Bashar al-Assad himself fled and he basically moved away along with the powerful elites. Now, it is now in a 3-month period of political and military uncertainty. Interim President Ahmed al-Shara is leading the new government, and that is where he has brokered peace with the US-backed Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, that is in the northeastern region of Syria. Now, if you take a look at the geography of Syria, that is where you will understand many of the issues. First of all, if you observe the region here, the coastal area, that is Latakia and Tartus, these are very, very important economic strongholds. Trade is driven from here. And you see, when you had the crisis in the Middle East as way back in 2015, Latakia would be the base for the Russian Navy. So Russians have still got some influence amongst the locals. And that basically was used by the Bashar al-Assad regime as well. So even today, Assad loyalists still control the coastal area. They still control this coastal area. So this is where the problem lies. Other problem basically lies from the region of Israel. Israel, in the name of counter-terrorism, is occupying the region of the Golan Heights, and that poses threat from the south. Then, when we talk about the northern region, in the Aleppo region, right, all the way till the region around the Tigris, this is where the Turkish-based Syrian National Army is having an impact. So Syria is embroiled from various issues from all different sides, right? SDF operates semi-independently in the northeastern region of Syria here. This is where the Kurdish, basically what you call as the military officials, or you call them rebels, you call them militias. The Kurdish militias, they operate from the northeastern part of Syria. Okay. Now, the geopolitical issues that Syria faces. Basically, the Assad loyalists in the coastal areas, they are carrying out large-scale massacres of the Alawite population. Then expansionism by Israel in the region of Golan Heights poses a problem, right, for the region of Syria. So here it poses a substantial issue. Then attacks in northeast by the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army. So these are the geopolitical issues. Okay. But at the same time, along with the geopolitical issues, what has to be looked out for? After all, there has to be a long-term agenda for peace, isn't it? Because understand, if Syria gets embroiled in crisis again, that provides a very fertile ground for extremism and fundamentalism to come up again in the region of West Asia. That provides a kind of migrant crisis again in the region of Europe. Most importantly, the human lives which are lost, thousands which are lost with the names not even documented, that is something that has to be cared for. So Syria's fate depends upon drafting a new constitution which has to be inclusive of all the communities, including the minority population. Otherwise, something which happened in Iraq in terms of sectarian violence, that is something which can happen and unfold in Syria as well. Right? Interim government consolidating power and gaining international recognition that the new interim president is struggling with. Not many people across the world are recognizing the new government due to the pressure by Russia. Russia has always favored Bashar al-Assad regime. Rebuilding the economy is a must in order to ensure long-lasting peace. So, because if the economy doesn't do well, then the nation in itself doesn't do well, right? So this is basically where we have to look out for going ahead in Syria. Now, some of the articles very briefly relevant for your prelims. So this is an image which has appeared in the first page. This talks about an Indian long-billed vulture, right, in the only vulture sanctuary, conservation sanctuary that is situated in India. So where is the only vulture conservation sanctuary situated in India? It is situated in the region of Ramnagara district near in the outskirts of Bangalore. That is where amongst the hills in the region and the rocky outcrops in the region, you will have the vulture conservation which is carried on. And that is showing certain positive signs. So it is the Ramdevara Bhatta in the region of Karnataka. That is in the Ramnagara district where the vulture sanctuary is situated. Now, when we talk about vultures in India, what is important for your examination in the prelims are the breeds of vulture or the species of vulture which are critically endangered. You should be able to know which are the breed or the species of vulture which are critically endangered. So you will find red-headed vulture, white-rumped vulture, right? Then slender-billed as well as Indian vulture. These four are critically endangered. Okay, so you have the white-rumped vulture, then you have the red-headed vulture, then you have the Indian vulture, and then you have the slender-billed, WRIS, right? Or use any mnemonic that you want, but these four should be known that these are critically endangered out of the overall different vulture species that you find. Then after that, coming to the next article. Now this talks about Tamil Nadu's mangrove cover has doubled between 2021 and 2024. Now that is a positive sign, right? Basically in certain districts around Thanjavur, that is where the mangrove population has increased. Now increase in mangrove population provides a better condition even for fisheries in the area. It provides for better carbon sequestration, greater amount of wood stock. At the same time, protects the coastal area from storm surges, cyclonic disturbances as well as tsunamis. So it is good. But then at the same time, the article also highlights that the mangroves, they are facing threat from invasive alien species like the Prosopis juliflora. and that is where it has to be controlled, right? So the invasive alien species in the name of Prosopis juliflora, that is endangering the mangroves. Okay, mangrove population in India, the largest density of it is found across the eastern coast in the region of Sundarbans. After that, the large density of mangroves in the eastern coast are found around Bhitarkanika in Odisha, and furthermore to the south around the region of the Godavari Delta, where you have the Korenga Wildlife Sanctuary. That is where you have very large areas. Then you have Pichavaram and so on. Okay. Now, India-New Zealand resumed trade deal talks after a decade. Now you see, for a long period of time, the trade deal, free trade agreement between India and New Zealand, that had been stalled. That has been resumed after almost a decade now. Now, New Zealand is interested in a greater access to Indian market, particularly in terms of dairy products. Because in New Zealand, the overall efficiency of dairy products and basically milk in itself, milk and milk products, the efficiency of production is very high. They want to export to India, but we impose a higher tax. We impose a duty of close to around 18% on goods coming from New Zealand. Now, why do we do so? In order to protect our own dairy farmers. That is where we impose an 18% duty. New Zealand, along with dairy, is also interested in accessing Indian market for various other agro-based products, wines, etc. India, on the other hand, experiences only 3% tariff when it is sending something to New Zealand. So that is where these negotiations are going to be tough in the days coming ahead. But you have to understand, India imposes much larger tariff as compared to New Zealand, and that is where the free trade agreement has to largely center around the services sector. This is what India is going to seek. Greater penetration of software sector, the people, software services people moving into New Zealand if the job requires them to do so. So greater movement of people is also something that India is going to negotiate about. Now, the Trump tariff tantrums which are there dominating the news story, that is also something which has pushed the individual countries of India and New Zealand to hammer out a free trade agreement. But this is a developing news story. It will develop over the next few weeks. Then the last article of the day is about Starlink. The article talks about what is Elon Musk's Starlink all about. While some of that article talks about the pricing requirement of the Starlink internet access, etc. We are not going to go into that. But Starlink is an overall program to give, or a project to provide internet access across the planet. If you have availability of sky above you, with the help of a device, you can always access internet. So what do you have in the Starlink program? In the Starlink program, you have thousands of satellites which orbit the planet in the low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit. Right. Now that is when, if you have any device which can send signal, receive signal, now thereby you can get an internet speed of close to around 100 Mbps, which is quite comparable to the wired connection that you have, broadband connection that you have. However, the latency period in this case is slightly higher. What is the latency period? So let's suppose I am using internet with this device, right? Let's suppose this is my phone, I'm using internet. So I send a command for any of the internet usage. Now it will go do the handshaking with the protocol, and after that I will receive the internet or the information packet. That time period which has elapsed, that is the latency. So latency period in this case is slightly larger as compared to the wired connection in the cities. But at the same time, it can be a boon, a beneficial aspect when we talk about the rural connectivity, when we talk about the remote areas. Many of the remote areas, they don't have the wired connection, but then they have access to the clear sky. So they will end up benefiting greatly out of this particular endeavor of Starlink. So here what do you see? You basically have the Starlink ground network, and there is the kind of communication which is done with the help of the satellite, and then information is received. right? So latency period slightly higher as compared to the wired connection, but at the same time, and the satellites low Earth orbits, but at the same time greatly beneficial for the rural population. So that marks the end of the session. I hope the session was helpful. If you have liked the content, please do not forget to click on the like, share and the subscribe button, and do take the test, the MCQ test on the Telegram channel, and do assess your level of understanding. We meet again tomorrow. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you.